Spotlight is proudly sponsored by HEC Media, St. Louis's home for arts, education, and culture.
Today on Spotlight, an exploration of corn that explores the worldwide impact of this extraordinary plant. Plus, it's not your ordinary doctor's clinic inside this St. Louis startup. And then we'll tell you what almost was built instead of the arch on the St. Louis riverfront. But first, an anonymous donation to the Botanical Garden sparks a new project. It's Sunday and you're watching the multiple Emmy Award-winning Spotlight.
Midwinter might seem like the quiet time of year at the Missouri Botanical Garden, but it's certainly not quiet for staff at the herbarium.
So an herbarium is like a library of dried, pressed plants, and they're organized by species, and it's basically a physical, verifiable record of what plants were growing at any given time in a particular place.
Every week, boxes arrive from around the world, filled with samples that need to be documented, described, and named. This process turns a dried plant into a specimen, and the scientific name it's given serves as shorthand for a wealth of information. This process is time and labor-intensive, which can slow down important revelations about extinction, conservation, or even the healing or nutritional value of different species. But now, thanks to a large gift from an anonymous donor, a new revolutionizing species identification, or RSI, project is being launched at the Missouri Botanical Garden, and it has the potential to accelerate and expand plant research on a global scale.
The new RSI project is a super exciting advancement of the garden because we're going to scan for the first time all 8 million specimens of the Missouri Botanic Garden herbarium. Our herbarium is the largest reference collection of dried plants in the world. So by scanning them, we make the entire information available to the rest of the world, and we're building a reference library for plants on the planet.
This is the basis for us to be able to conduct high-quality restoration, high-quality conservation, education, and training programs and thinking about sustainability. And the one aspect that is really crucial is the collaborative aspect, because it's providing like a virtual space where we can do research locally, but also connect with a global community of botanists that is doing incredibly exciting research in different parts of the world.
A huge portion of them, we estimate something like 20% of plant species have not been described. We have more species in a tiny plot in some parts of the tropics than there are total species in the state of Missouri. We're still just kind of scratching at the surface of the biodiversity of our planet.
Plants give us the air we breathe, the food we eat, the clothes we wear, the medicines. In some ways, this new project is actually going to allow us to really leverage the power of plants so we can really ensure that our planet remains healthy and diverse and ready to sustain future generations.
So the applications for this are endless. This can help us model invasive species, for example, try to figure out where they're going to potentially show up next. It can help us identify rare species that are in particular danger. But first, there's a lot of labor involved to get the specimens digitized, and that's what this project does. It's a $14.5 million project to hire staff to image, database, do a lot of quality control. In addition to these visual scans with high-resolution digital cameras to try to build these identification tools, we're using a spectroradiometer, a fancy piece of technology, to take a full spectrum scan of those specimens.
We send a light impulse onto a leaf, and then basically depending on the reflection, we can tell what kind of chemicals in the leaf, we can tell something about the anatomical structure. So in other words, it creates a fingerprint of a species. And that fingerprint can actually be used to identify a species.
And then here we have wavelengths going from 350 nanometers all the way to 2500, which encompasses both the visible and non-visible range.
It works actually very well on dry plants because water would actually sort of deter the light a little bit. But the plan is in the future to also calibrate it for live material, for example, living plants, trees, and so on. And so the future vision would be that you could sort of mount the same sensors on a drone, for example, and a drone could fly over a canopy of trees and basically identify a tree species by comparing to our reference library created by scanning our herbarium.
The implementation of AI will help to speed up the process of identification, but it depends on the centuries of experience and work that has been and will be done by humans.
Humans are essential. I mean, first of all, the curation of the specimen can only be done by humans, and artificial intelligence is basically just complementary. So humans identify the plant specimens, and then the data set created by humans is actually used to train artificial intelligence. So in other words, artificial intelligence is only as good as humans.
It really could be transformative if you can build these automated species identification tools. That doesn't replace that expertise, and that's where we're running these two things in parallel. You'll always need that expertise to verify and test and refine those models. But if you can get things coming in from the field identified to a species with some degree of confidence, they can get them into the hands of the experts who can then verify those identifications or tell, oh, this is actually a new species, it needs to be described. So it's I see them as very complementary approaches and tools we are desperately in need of that kind of biodiversity data, and we do not have enough expertise globally to do it.
So in addition to teaching AI how to identify plants with the garden's existing specimens, the RSI project will focus on mentoring the next generation of botanists and taxonomists.
I'm really excited to be able to offer this really unique opportunity to gain a skill set that very few people have in herbarium, taxonomy, and curation. And we have some staff here who've been here for decades. They are world experts in their group, and the opportunity for those newer staff to learn from those people, I think, is just tremendous. That insight of what goes into a name and what goes into data of biodiversity, I think, is a really useful thing for a wide range of fields in conservation, land management, policymaking.
At the end of the day, the research and cataloging that is being done at the herbarium is instrumental in preserving not just the health of plants, but of the planet.
All the biodiversity and climatic challenges we are facing, these are all global problems, and we all need to work on it together.
If you say, oh yeah, I want to conserve the rainforest, you say, great. What should you be conserving? What should I be looking for when I go there and make sure that it's there? Or if there's a fire or some other kind of disaster and we want to replant things, what should we replant? We are stewards of a collection on behalf of humanity and helping humanity understand wherever you are the biodiversity that exists in the world.
By having the collections, by distributing this information, by working in a collaborative fashion, we can really think outside the box and work together towards solutions that are truly innovative and that will truly make a huge difference to the world.
For more St. Louis stories, subscribe to the HEC YouTube channel. Spotlight STL from HEC Media.
We are currently in the Stephen and Peter Sachs Museum at the Missouri Botanical Garden, and right now we're featuring a special exhibition called Kernels of Culture, Maize Around the World, and it explores the worldwide impact of this amazing plant called maize that started out very, very long ago, many thousands of years ago, in southern Mexico, and eventually has become one of the top 3 grains that are grown and sold and shipped around the world. So when you enter the Stephen and Peter Sachs Museum, our lower level gallery features 211 student artworks. These artworks were created by students in St. Louis area schools under the tutelage of their art teachers, who were all participating in a special call where I asked them to have their students create artworks that show how they enjoy corn. And so we have a massive gamut of popcorn at the movies, enjoying corn mazes or corn sticks, corn dogs, making corn with their family in the kitchen, tamales even. So there's many different ways that I think a lot of the visitors will be able to appreciate that they too enjoy corn through these student artworks. When you head upstairs into our main gallery, that is a room that is filled with a lot of cases and cabinets, so it's a perfect place to display all these fabulous objects and artworks that feature corn. We have several items that are made by indigenous artists that are on view, including corn husk dolls, as well as all sorts of pop culture corn, food, corn cob pipes from the Missouri Meerschaum Company in Washington, Missouri, as well as science displays from some of the contemporary science organizations that are here in St. Louis. One of the key reasons that I ended up curating an exhibition on maize was because the garden herbarium has a multi-thousand corn cob collection called the Anderson Cutler Maize Collection, and it features corn that was collected from throughout Southwest America, Mexico, and even northern South America. These cobs are featured in different sections throughout the exhibition, and they highlight the incredible visual and genetic and historic diversity of maize that started, 9,000 years ago when people started farming it. And the third gallery that we have is our South Gallery, which has the work of one artist named Megan Singleton. And our horticulture team grew corn for her, and she used that from corn cobs, photographs of corn cobs, as well as turning all of the stalks of the corn into special paper that she has created multiple sculptures with in the gallery. So you can explore the genetics of corn, the physicality of a corn stalk, as well as the multicolored corn cobs that are a part of her display. We hope you come and check out all of the wonderful, colorful diversity in Kernels of Culture, Maize Around the World, the special exhibition at the Stephen and Peter Sachs Museum on view until March 31st, 2025. The museum is a part of the garden, as a part of daily garden admission, and it's open from 11:30 in the morning to 4:30 in the evening.
HEC Media. Recognized, celebrated, honored time and again for excellence in the industry. Mid-America Emmys, Tellys, Natoas, Auroras, and other awards. HEC Media has been bringing home the hardware for over a decade. Hundreds of nominations and wins, from regional to international levels. Arts and education, to author talks, magazine shows and documentaries, individual craft achievements to overall excellence, plus so much more. And although doing good work is its own reward, recognition, well, it's nice too. See what all the fuss is about. Find all of the award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
In a world where everyday activities are intertwined in the cloud, going to a cloud clinic for healthcare needs could be modern and efficient.
And all the tools in a doctor's office are connected and live streaming to the doctor remotely. What that allows you to do is not only do you get access to primary care, but you get access to 70 specialists same day.
This was Dr. Danish Nagda's idea. He calls it resilient health.
We have clinics in Dallas and in Oklahoma. In St. Louis, we have 2.
The St. Louis startup combines telehealth from home with appointments at a cloud clinic, like this one in Clayton. Doctors are live streaming into the room. Medics use different scopes, probes, and other tools. Doctors are getting the measurements and information in real time. He's offering a resilient health plan that sustainably builds between the patient and doctors over time in a way that is transparent and efficient. Nagda is the founder and CEO of Resilient.
Resilient helps employers reduce healthcare costs by providing same-day access to primary and specialty care. So you come into a clinic, you get access to care, and you go home. So the way that we approach this is virtual care when appropriate, in-person care when appropriate.
The streamlined system gets results with a diagnosis and more timely treatment.
Can we take a look at our left ear?
Nagda says Resilient members get easy access to preventative care, avoiding costly trips to ERs and urgent cares.
I'm a physician by training, trained at Penn and WashU, and I'm an ear, nose, throat surgeon.
Having both preventative and more affordable care is a big motivator for Dr. Nagda, along with the loving memory of his father.
I was a caregiver for my father. My dad came to this country, no formal education, worked really, really hard. All 3 kids went to the best schools in the country, the American dream for immigrants. But unfortunately for Dad, even though he had access to health insurance, he didn't have good access to health care. Ended up having his first heart attack at 53. While I was in residency, when he was 60 years old, I actually moved him into my own home and took care of him during residency as a surgeon and took care of him for nearly a decade. That experience of being both a doctor and a caregiver is what inspired me to build this.
His experience is shaping Resilient Health.
Not only did the healthcare system and the lack of access from it and his misdiagnosis, which is actually what was the cause of all of this, they missed that he had sleep apnea for 20 years. All he knew was a CPAP, and my dad would be here to play with my kid. The fact that they missed all of that, not only did he lose everything and our family lose everything, but his employer lost millions of dollars. Nobody won except the system. The system won. They don't actually mention sleep apnea on his death certificate, did not say that. But that was the cause. That was the root cause of the disease. The system is designed that way. They want opacity. They don't want transparency.
That's a selling point to businesses, and his story is the basis of the business model.
Every year, employers are seeing increases of 20, 30% in their costs. And they're saying, we're done. We want a different system. And the answer to that is very straightforward. It's more time with your primary. Remember how that used to be the way things were? Now, you get 3 minutes and they kick you out. And it's because of this underlying thing called fee for service. So they get paid more the more patients they see. And we actually get paid for value. So we actually get paid to take care of a whole patient. So that's the business model change. And we've convinced employers, hey, let us have more time. Let's give them incredible access, not just to primary care, but to specialty care. And surprise, people started losing weight. They started getting healthier. We started changing the course of people's lives. We've hit a nerve. We've hit a chord.
Investors are paying attention. Resilient Health has recently raised $10 million from investors that include St. Louis billionaire Jim McKelvey, a serial entrepreneur and inventor, co-founder of Block, formerly known as Square. Among Block products, Cash App is one that's widely known and used.
So we wanted to raise from people that were mission aligned, that believed that healthcare needs a bigger change, and every major investor that came in has actually built $1 billion company, which is very unusual.
And now Resilient is looking forward to some big things happening.
We are expanding in St. Louis, and we'll probably have 5 to 10 clinics in St. Louis in the next couple of years.
Later on Spotlight, a man with an extreme vocal range.
Go to hecmedia.org for the arts and authors,
Completely accidental because I never set out to write a book.
science and history, culture and community,
It's considered to be the oldest organic farm west of the Mississippi.
education, films,
Finding the coin places the site firmly in the 13th century.
what's happening now around St. Louis, and more. See for yourself at hecmedia.org.
History Spotlight, brought to you by HEC Media and the Missouri Historical Society.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jody Sowell from the Missouri Historical Society, and this is History Spotlight. Our iconic Gateway Arch could have looked much different. Public historian Andrew Wonko explains.
When people look at St. Louis, probably the first thing that comes to mind is the image of the Gateway Arch. It's our internationally recognized symbol of the city. But far fewer people probably know that once upon a time, it was one of many, many different possibilities of what could have stood on the St. Louis riverfront. The story of the Gateway Arch's rise spans across decades and is a fascinating story of many different decisions being made. If they had gone just slightly differently, we might have had something much different standing on St. Louis's riverfront today. In the 1930s, St. Louis's city leaders looked across the old and dirty St. Louis riverfront and thought to themselves, what if we could replace all of this with a monument to westward expansion and Thomas Jefferson and St. Louis's important role in the widening of the United States? By the late 1930s, they had actually secured federal funding for this idea, and they managed to tear down the entire St. Louis riverfront. More than 400 buildings across 40 blocks came down in the course of just 2 years. It's an amazing loss to our city's history when we look at it today, but at the moment, they did not see these structures as having any future value. So they had this big blank open spot on the riverfront, but even at that time, still nobody knew what this memorial was going to look like. It would take about a decade later before they opened up an architectural competition to design the St. Louis Riverfront Memorial. There were 172 different entries from all across the United States. They were chosen by a panel of 7 judges that included architects and city planners and other people who were interested in this. There were 2 rounds of competition, and the judges looked at all of the different entries. Each entrant was only allowed to present 2 big boards that told the entire story of their project, and that was all the judges knew and had to choose from. Young Eero Saarinen was a Michigan architect trying desperately to get his first big commission and break out from beneath the shadow of his much more famous father, Eliel Saarinen, who was also an architect. And he chose to enter the St. Louis Riverfront Memorial Competition. He came up with this idea of St. Louis being a gateway, and he started to play around with the idea of an arch. Had the competition only been 1 round, the arch probably wouldn't be the icon we think of it as today. His original arch was only about 300 feet tall instead of more than 600 feet tall. It was much more semicircular, almost like a rainbow, and it would have been made out of concrete instead of encased in stainless steel. So I can only imagine what the 50-year-old concrete arch on the riverfront would have looked like today. It wasn't until the second round of competition that Eero Saarinen unveiled the stainless steel skin and made it much more taller and graceful. The judges unanimously chose him the winner in the second round of competition, but he had some very stiff competition. Looking at the story of the Gateway Arch and how it was chosen from, again, 171 other possibilities for what could have been on the riverfront, this iconic design, we can't imagine anything else standing there today. Once upon a time, just a few people making a decision could have seen that changed very drastically.
Next week on History Spotlight, we will share the story of the country's first black female millionaire and her connection to St. Louis.
To learn more about the Missouri Historical Society, visit mohistory.org. On March 1st, 1912, the first parachute jump from an airplane took place in St. Louis, when U.S. Army Captain Albert Berry took off from Kinloch Field and jumped out over Jefferson Barracks Army Base. The jump was 1,500 feet, and it took an estimated 500 feet for the chute to fill with air. 2 years later, the pilot of the plane, Tony Janis, would achieve fame as the first airline pilot.
HEC Media, bringing you culture and community. Find all of HEC's positive programming and award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
Love, it's about love, the push and shove, the glory of. It's about love.
He's a man of many voices, literally. Terry Barber is renowned for his expansive vocal range. The international countertenor sings from baritone to soprano.
I love to sing music in several parts, and so some of the music on my recordings is actually choral works where I'll sing in different ranges. And so I carefully choose the lowest and highest notes. Hear me singing as a group of baritones first, and people who know my voice listened to that and said, that doesn't sound like you. How do you do that? That's part of the fun of recording, is you can really experiment and try things. On my tours, I'll sing something written for baritone, something for tenor, something for mezzo-soprano, and even something for soprano. That's one of the things that I like to do to keep the audience guessing, keep them on their toes. Extreme use of range, both pitch and colors, to sing different genres is how I keep people entertained in my tour programs. It's one of my missions, really, to expose everyone to classically driven art and to create lovers. So my highest compliment in that category might be an audience member who approaches me after and says, I don't like classical music. I didn't think I did. Now I think I want to go to the Opera Theater. Now I want to go to Powell Hall because you challenged my perception about what classical music is. For me, it's also about the personal connection to the art. So one thing that I want everyone in the audience to do is to connect personally.
Terry's love for music began at an early age.
I think my mother sang to me before I was born. My father was a boy soprano as well and sang on the Admiral here in St. Louis. So I came from a tradition of singing around the house. I always was singing around the house. I don't remember a time when I wasn't. I started in kindergarten really being recognized, and then when I was 7 I started private voice lessons, and when I was 9 I was Amal in Amal and the Night Visitors, which is a Christmas operetta.
Today, he tours the world and performs at the most prestigious concert venues. But there is one stage that he'll never forget.
I remember at one point early in my career, because I did my master's in England and had opportunity to sing in Europe already because of that, then I thought, I wonder where my career will take me. And it's one of the great perks of being a performing artist that travels, because I have been paid to go to some of the most wonderful places. But stepping out onto the stage at Svetlanov Hall across the world, on the other side of the world, at what is really their Carnegie Hall, it just seemed too good to be true.
Being one of the most sought-after vocalists, it didn't take long for the Grammy Award-winning ensemble Chanticleer to seek out Barber.
I was offered a position to join Chanticleer, which is a group that, if you look at your career, there was a moment when I was in college when I thought, if I could just get into Chanticleer, that would be it. That would be my world. And I moved to California to join the group that is a multiple Grammy-winning group. We had a world tour. It was 116 concerts in the year that I was with them. I was singing in my soprano voice only. And so it was really an extreme use of my voice. And after a year, I recognized that I had a very difficult choice to make, and that was to stay in the group or to go off and pursue my solo career. And I knew that my voice would do one or the other, but not probably both. So I made a very difficult choice and left and moved to Manhattan.
And that choice worked out for Terry. He appeared with the New York Metropolitan Opera and made his debut at Carnegie Hall. He also launched his nonprofit foundation, Artists for a Cause.
And the whole organization is really about how can art be the solution to meet critical needs in our community. I believe that all students deserve an opportunity to have access to arts education. Pavarotti had a voice teacher. There is no end to the work that you can do.
And there's no end to what Terry Barber can do. He released the rock album Reimagined Mercury and starred in the national tour, Mercury, the story of Queen's frontman.
To stay updated on Terry Barber's latest projects, be sure to follow him on Facebook and Instagram at Touring Artist. Next week, a pioneering woman at WashU brings a modern movement to research. Plus, the 6 women who reported on World War II with incredible bravery. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.